What's up, everybody? It's Critical. My friend and I just watched a movie called Space Forces 2911. It's about the Turkish space fleet and their battle against the King of Atlantis to save Earth. I'd like to give an evaluation of the movie. The movie begins with a huge war with no explanation on what's going on, then cuts to this scene where we're following around a spaceship modeled after a frog. We're then introduced to the crew that consists of this man that looks like a fetus, this man that looks like a goofy Chris Pine, this aging magician, and then this woman over here who has some of the worst cataracts I've ever seen. None of these characters had a name we could identify except for the one in the middle. His name's Martin. He turns around and says he has a huge erection, to which the captain offers him his car. He then tells him what a car is, considering the movie takes place in 2911, so cars aren't common, and then says that this car was passed down to him from his grandfather. This means that in order for him to receive this car from his grandfather must have lived approximately 900 fucking years. That's a pretty long and prosperous life. They then decide to jump through a nebula for absolutely no reason. They all begin to panic, so the captain orders them to shoot. They begin firing at nothing for around 2 minutes. Now, to be clear, I don't understand Turkish, but my friend does, so he translated most of the movie as we watched it, but there was no explanation for almost anything that was happening in this film. For instance, they find this random ship after they leave the nebula that begins shooting at them. Like any good captain would do in this situation, he asks his crew to pull his finger 2 times, they decline both times, and then they decide to fire back. So they bring out the nanoparticle disintegrating Omicron atom splitter beams, which is akin to having a man go out there and shoot the bitch with a super soaker. They realize they picked a fight they can't win, so after blowing up a window, they decide to retreat. The retreat is swift, strategic, tactical, and advantageous. They decide to crash land onto a foreign planet with absolutely no indication of why they decided to do this. They're all very injured and they awake in a medical bay. I'd like to point out that this medical bay is probably the worst medical facility in all of the universe. Not only is there no medical equipment around, but they didn't even bother taking them out of their armor. They basically just sat them on a bed and hoped they'd be okay. An anorexic Morgan Freeman with snow on his hair introduces himself. The scene shifts to a bald man explaining how he was unable to find the Krabby Patty secret formula, to which his boss has a brutal reaction, and this is the main antagonist of the film. He talks as though he has nails in his fucking throat. It's unreal.
Bana o gemiyi bulacaksınız. Anlıyor musun?
You then get a close-up of this poor man's face and want to cry. A man wearing the suit from Crisis rides in on a ballpoint pen, and that scene had no significance, ends abruptly, and then goes right back to the base, where this man and this man with facial paralysis begin to explain the situation to the main crew. They then talk about the man you just saw in the previous scene who electrocuted one of his henchmen, the man with the vagina on his head. He's the king of Atlantis, he's a powerful wizard, but was imprisoned by the gods in a nebula after enslaving the people of Atlantis. But now he's coming back. There's absolutely no explanation for why he's coming back. For all we know, he's coming back so he can jerk off and do CrossFit. There's also no explanation for why these 4 characters are involved in any way whatsoever. They were just flying around and then found the fucking King of Atlantis. I'd also like to point out the futuristic technology in this scene. Look in the background on every computer monitor. It's just yellow spinning Beyblades. Looks like a fucking laundromat, all these washing machines going in complete unison. It's incredible. I just can't even imagine what type of meaningful statistical knowledge these yellow spinning halo loading screens could possibly convey to the crew. But what do I know about the future? Maybe 2911 will really have shit that looks like that. Pussyface looks like a badly designed Bionicle and starts talking about how he wants to take over the world. He's thinking pretty small picture if you ask me. He's got a big ship, a big crew. He could definitely just go to other planets if he wanted to, but he seems pretty fixated on this one. And then he gives himself a nice little giggle there. He has a real hoot with himself. The Fuckboy Brigade looks at pictures of pipes. The investigation is led by Spock. They come to the conclusion that the sewers are a great way to infiltrate the King of Atlantis ship because there's shit in the sewers. So who's gonna go in the sewers when there's shit there? So the squad straps in and hops on their hover pencils and skis through the galaxy's cleanest and most well-lit sewers. The crew emerges and crashes a meeting where the King of Atlantis is addressing his followers. The crew decides that there's no point in stealth, so they shout at each other, jump around, and just sound like a fucking bulldozer driving over a field of whoopee cushions. It's absolutely incredible how no one realizes that they're not part of Team Atlantis, but they manage to succeed in their infiltration mission. They manage to lure one of the Power Rangers to the indoor cornfield where he's assassinated by the captain using some advanced Muay Thai maneuvers. They then take the corpse and throw it in the marijuana field and put on the man's uniform as a disguise. The disguise doesn't work. Martin's captured and the other 3 are standing by, decide to leave Martin behind and just go back to headquarters and forget about him. Martin has a conversation with the cranial cooter. He talks back and then gets shocked.
Davetiye mi göndereceksin? Au!
So it seems in 2911 weapons are no longer made to maim and kill, mainly just mildly disturb or annoy whoever they're used on. Martin breaks free and the King of Atlantis blasts him. The King of Atlantis then gets bored and upset, so he blasts one of his unconscious men on the ground, killing him. The nice old man with white pubes on his head takes the 3 remaining crew members to the galaxy's first table and tells them that they're the chosen ones and they're fulfilling a prophecy. Now, I'm not one to usually question prophecies, but I don't think these 4 are the ones of the prophecy. They have done nothing right. They randomly found the King of Atlantis and ran away instantly. Martin gets captured and the 3 retreated and left him for dead. I don't really think they fit any type of prophecy profile. The old man casts a spell, and Martin starts to dance. He just busts it wide open, really starts feeling himself. And then all of a sudden he's overcome with some type of power. And then he begins coming in his pants. It really just looks like a kid playing with an action figure. Or maybe this man's undergoing an exorcism. Regardless, Martin ends up unconscious. The poor guy. All 4 blue machetes get placed on a table. An earthquake happens, and so does magic. They're all struck by lightning. And that's it. They don't get any powers or anything. They just get struck by lightning, and the old man dies. That's all that happens. Right there, look. That thing that looks like tumbleweed, that's the old man right there. He fucking gets electrocuted. They don't even get powers from this. Nothing happens. And it's never again referenced throughout the entire movie. Now, this movie doesn't make any sense at all at any point. It's just an amalgamation of ass and dirt. But it's at this point in the movie where it just gets even stranger and even more confusing. It's at this point where the director just slaps the titty out of a baby's mouth that's being breastfed by its mother. So apparently they can infiltrate the King of Atlantis ship whenever they want, so the captain just comes on here with no explanation how, then he hits these 2 with his ultimate move, the colon cleanser, so he's dead instantly. This man runs for his life, and the captain chases him down like a fucking linebacker or a good Samaritan chasing down someone that just stole someone else's purse. But what makes this scene so confusing is that they don't show how the captain got on board this ship. The scene just starts with him walking towards some crew members on the King of Atlantis ship. I mean, why is it so hard to kill the King of Atlantis in this case? If you can just teleport on board the ship, just teleport to the fucking King's headquarters and fist him. Then for some reason the guy that was running away just completely lets his guard down and stops at a door. Captain made sure to capitalize on that opportunity. Sharp as a tack. The captain gets spotted, but luckily for him, the enemies have the same aim as stormtroopers with their little light crossbow shooter. Also, luckily for him, they shoot the slowest projectiles in the universe. That shit travels at the same speed as a fucking shock put ball going through the air. Must be the heaviest fucking beams of light in the galaxy. That shit travels at like 1 foot per hour. The captain gets away, fails to defuse a bomb, so instead throws it about 10 feet in front of him. But luckily for him, the explosion amounts to nothing more than a small firecracker going off. No idea what the fucking bomb was for, why it was there, why you had to defuse it, why he threw it, just makes no fucking sense. All of a sudden, he's back on the ship hitting some random buttons with his huge fucking sausage fingers. Another random, nameless old man stares intensely at a camera like he's trying to identify a strange smell that he's smelling. War in space breaks out between the Atlanteans and the Turkish space fleet. They begin a really intense battle. The captain has a good plan where he's going to jump from his ship onto the King of Atlantis ship and land right in the cockpit. I don't know why he doesn't employ the same tactic he used 2 times earlier in the movie where he just teleports onto the ship randomly. But regardless, he does a cool little air maneuver, lands in there, then has an extremely polite conversation with the King of Atlantis. He just points at him, telling him what he did was naughty and reprimands him for his behavior. It's honestly like watching an adult lecture their child on something they did wrong, something trivial like stealing a cookie from their friend Rutherford. Then naturally a fight breaks out between the commander and the King of Atlantis, and it's an absolute landslide. The King of Atlantis throws 1 punch, but the choreography is amazing, just like everything else in this movie. I really don't understand how the King of Atlantis became king, because he's definitely not a warrior. I guess having a vagina on your forehead's enough to rule Atlantis. Not quite sure. But then the ship explodes, and that's basically the end of the movie. Once again, the universe is saved thanks to the Turkish Space Force. But the movie wasn't quite over until the King of Atlantis touches the camera, and then roll credits. So, there's room for a sequel, thank goodness. I can't wait for Space Forces 2912. I'm sure that'll be a real blockbuster. But overall, I'd say after sitting through the 90-minute feature film, I'd have to give it 2 nipples way up. It was a great film.